Hi everyone and welcome to this week's video. We're going to talk about compression and limiting. But before we move on any forward, I would like to send a special thank you to all my subscribers here on YouTube. And if you are not a subscriber yet, hit that button below so you will get notified whenever I post new content here on YouTube. Your subscriptions and your comments help me post better quality content here on YouTube, and also it is encouraging to see that some other people have the same interest as I do in music production. Okay, so I did post a couple of videos on compression already, but in this one I'm going to talk about compression versus limiting. Both compressors and limiters are what we call dynamics processors, and they work on the same concept to decrease the dynamic range of an audio signal passing through them by squashing the louder sounds. What makes the compressors and limiters different in concept is the ratio at which they squash the loudest transients of the incoming sound. This also determines the usages and their place in the signal flow. I find there is a general misconception when it comes to compressors offering higher ratios like 10:1 and even beyond that. Most of the times people believe that those are limiters. They can be used as limiters, but that is not necessarily their purpose. The compressor units, the actual hardware units, are built in such a way that they detect what is called an RMS. It is an average of the signal and not the peak of the audio signal. So even if we set the compressor to the fastest attack possible, there is a chance we are going to have transients that catch the compressor unaware. The circuits in limiters are built different because limiters do not offer an attack adjustment. So as soon as the transients hit that threshold, they are brought under control instantaneously. In compressors, we have a couple more parameters we can adjust. We can adjust the attack, we can adjust the release time, and we can also adjust the knee. Compression also has more usages when it comes to music production. We can use compression to sculpt the tone of a sound, to shape the transients. We can even use compressors in the recording stages just before our signal hits the actual recorder, and we want to keep a nice, clean, balanced signal. So next we're going to have a look at a couple of examples using compression and a limiter. Alright, so we are here in an Ableton Live session, and we do have a recorded guitar sample, and I'm going to add compression to it. I'm going to show you guys exactly how the compressor works and how the sample is going to look before and after compression when it comes to transients and the waveform. Let's dive in and let's hear the sample without anything on it. That was the whole sample. Now I'm going to use a compressor from FabFilter. I'm using this compressor because I think it has a nice visual representation in real time of what the parameters of the compressor actually do. And I'm going to try to reduce the transients, but the compression, I don't want it to be too audible. Let's see how I can do that. A good start for compression on vocals and guitars is a 4:1 ratio, because as I mentioned, we don't want the compression to be that much audible. We just want to be able to control the transients so it doesn't go into any clipping or anything like that. So the ratio is 5. Let's start with that. and let's hear how it sounds. The more ratio we add, the harder the peaks are going to get squashed. I'm going to change this to classic, and okay, let's have a here of the sample with and without compression. Not much difference, but let's also record it and see how the transients and the waveform looks like. Okay, so first we're going to look at the uncompressed signal. You can see these transients when the player attacks the chord. The initial attack of the chord is actually louder than the rest of his playing. This is in the uncompressed, and in the compressed version you can see the peaks and the throughs are smoother, and it does offer us more balanced, more controlled sound, because as I mentioned again, we do not want to have anything clipping on the recording device, or we do not want anything to be overpowering in the mix. Well, in this example, we also want to maintain a natural, or as close to natural sound as we can. Another thing that I want to mention while we are here is the auto gain feature, this guy. So I'm going to play with auto gain and without auto gain. All right, so the idea behind auto gain is to help us maintain our objective point of view when it comes to sound. Whenever we address dynamic range in a sound, we also adjust the volume of the sound. And as humans, we do have a strong tendency to like the sound that plays louder between two sounds. So by activating the auto gain feature, the processor, the compressor is also adjusting any loss or addition in the gain, so that the volume at the output is the same as the volume in the input stage. All right, guys, now let's move on to the example that I picked for the limiters, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to show you how a limiter actually affects the waveform of a sound. And I have the same sample playing, and it's the same sample, as I said. And so I have the same sample playing, and I do want to show you two different limiters. They're both from Waves, but again, I'm just picking these plugins because I find them to be the ones that are the most obvious and the ones that are easiest to follow for our examples. Let's dig into the first one. It is the L1, and I'm going to reset this guy, and here we go. We're going to play. All right, as I mentioned before, the limiters have less controls that you can tweak. In this particular one, we have threshold, we have the output ceiling, which basically acts as an output gain, and we have the release. The release actually tells the compressor how much I want it to stay engaged once once that threshold is hit. And let's also record our waveform and see how it's different. Okay, here we go. Less threshold. More gain. Now it's starting to get distorted, but I just wanted to emphasize the idea of what the limiter does. Let's have a look at the peaks as well. I'm sorry, at the waves as well. And the initial one, the waves are actually, you can see the transients of the attack where the player strums the guitar harder. And in our example where we use the first limiter, you can see that the waves are actually boosted to where the quiet parts actually are at the same level as the louder parts. So what I actually did is I increased the gain of the quiet parts. And yeah, I'm going to delete this and we're going to move on to the second. Again, simple interface and just two controls that we can tweak with. We have the gain and the peak reduction. We also have a high pass filter and a frequency, or basically we're telling the compressor how to react to lower frequencies. We're not going to touch that. We're only going to use this as a straight limiter. You also have a switch if you want to use it as a compressor or as a limiter, but as I said, I do believe that the power of this plugin and of the actual unit lies in the circuits used as a limiter. So I'm going to go straight in and tweak with the sound and see what we can obtain. Again, it's starting to get distorted, but I'm pushing it. So what I want to obtain is a clean signal. I want to obtain that clean waveform. I want to bring all the transients to pretty much the same level. And I think that's it. You can see a lot of gain reduction here. That's a lot. I'm actually pushing this limit. And it's starting to sound funky. A little less. Still funky. Let's push more gain reduction. Alright, let's have a look at the transients. Let's see what this baby did. This is a transient before any limiter processor, and in the post-processing visual you can see how the waves were changed to a more, again, a more smoother and a more contained sound. Guys, I think that's about it for this week's video. I did show you a couple of examples of how I envision using compression to address those sharp transients, and also limiters to get that balance of a recording or balancing your mix. Again, limiters are used post compression, and we mostly use limiters in mastering a song. But I'm also really curious to see how you guys are using compression. So if you have any ideas or any tricks in using limiters and compressors, you can drop them in the comment section below. If you guys haven't subscribed yet to my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing so you will get notifications whenever I post similar videos to this one. And I'm really excited in having you guys here, and thank you guys for helping me build a community in this YouTube channel. Have a great week, and I will see you all next time.